What's up, guys? Welcome to G Whiskey. I'm Jeff. This is a channel where I offer my thoughts and opinions on a specific whiskey, and every once in a while throw on other whiskey-related content. Today, I've got a list for you guys. We're going to be going over 7 brands that work very well as IBs. Stick around. All right, so we're doing a list today. We're going to cover 7 brands that I think work very well as IBs. Now, the thing about IBs is that I drink them less and less nowadays, and that's very much a direct result of the channel, just because on the channel, I do try and cover wide releases and releases that everyone can get their hands on. So in that sense, I am a very mainstream malty maestro. And that's a malt mention. But yeah, it's true. I just don't try a lot of IBs, and that's sad because while I do try a lot of the whiskey that I want, I can't try all of the whiskey that I want. I mean, my life is hard. Nobody's life has ever been as hard as mine. Now, because I'm not really on the IB scene anymore, I'm not going to be using any superlative words and saying these are the best whiskeys that you can get in IBs. I don't know what the best brands for IBs are. What I can tell you is that these are 7 solid brands. I think for the most part, they are safe bets. And if you want to get into the IB scene yourself, these are brands that are worth investigating. That said, I think that most brands are probably worth investigating as IBs because IBs always give us a different take on the distillate, and it's not going to be quite as engineered to fit a certain house style. So IBs are just always interesting to explore, and not just the brands you know and love. With IBs, you can get into more obscure stuff. You can try brands you've never tried before. So try McDuff, try a Glentochers, try a Glenbergie, try a Glen Stinky. All right, that last one's not real. One thing you got to remember about IBs, though, is that they pretty much are always a risk. So if you have an IB from a certain brand that you like over here and you want to try that brand again from this IB, it might be totally different. We got different production techniques, quality of casks, storage, maturation, all that stuff. So it's not consistent. You never know with these guys. Anyway, that's the premise. I'm sure you get it at this point. As usual, guys, I've got a mystery pour in my glass here. Make sure you stick around to the end of the list and I'll share with you what that is. And I guess that's it. Let's just jump into our list. In the meantime, if you'll kindly leave a like down below, that would be greatly appreciated. So we'll kick things off with an honorable mention. My honorable mention here is Caol Ila. And the reason it's just an honorable mention, despite having some great IBs out there, is that I think this one's probably predictable, expected. I think this is probably the go-to brand for IBs if you want a nice peated whiskey. Now, obviously, there are plenty of other quality peated IBs out there, but if you're looking for something from Islay, for example, a lot of those are going to be really rare, hard to find, expensive, and that's not Caol Ila. Caol Ila IBs are basically a dime a dozen. They're everywhere, and oftentimes they can be excellent. Granted, they can be a mixed bag, but I have had some excellent ones, and you can get just any kind of Caol Ila you want, you know, any kind of age, any kind of cask maturation, it's all out there. So there's something for everyone as long as you're a fan of peated whiskey. And again, more available and more affordable than pretty much anything else from Islay. So it's a great brand to explore. Check it out, Caol Ila. Starting off our proper list at number 7, I've got Highland Park. Highland Park is a fantastic distillery. I like their OB line. I think it's a solid line. However, it often comes in at a lower ABV, and the standard line, while very good, it's very intentional. So if you want something a little bit more exciting and less engineered from the brand, I think IBs are a great way to go. I've had some Highland Park IBs that are absolute beasts. A lot of them are excellent, but have very little to do with the standard line. We get the house style in there, but they really take things in a different direction, a more interesting direction. So again, it's a really good brand to check out, especially if you're already an HP fan. There we go, Highland Park. At number 6, we've got more of an obscure one. This is McDuff. Now, McDuff does have an OB line, and that's called Glendevron. And that brand is not loved. And because of that, you can get a lot of McDuff IBs out there for a pretty fair price, and some of them are really good. I don't think this is a brand that a lot of people would even think to explore, and I'm sure a lot of people out there who have tried Glendevron weren't really impressed, and they probably weren't too interested in investigating the brand as an IB, but they can be, as I said, very, very good. So if you want an interesting IB that's a little bit off the beaten path, that's probably not very expected, McDuff is a great brand to check out. Next up, we've got Morlock. Morlock is kind of an interesting case because I remember like 12, 15 years ago or so, they didn't have an OB line. They had nothing. They just had a series of IBs out. But people loved them. They became very popular. People were talking about them. And as a direct result of that, Diageo decided to launch an OB line. The first OB line looked like this. It was way too expensive. Obviously, since then, we've gotten these ones. But yeah, it's almost like they started off as an IB and became popular as a result of those releases. So needless to say, they make good IBs. Now, I do see less Mortlocks as IBs today, and they cost more, and I'm not sure that the quality is quite where it was back in the glory days, but still a great brand. And it's one of those cases, much like Highland Park, where they do have a solid OB line, but they can be a little bit underpowered. So if you want something more craft from the brand, obviously IBs are the way to go. Now, if you know anything about Morlock, they're famous for their sherried stuff. They have a certain like meaty, savory quality, and that can be somewhat subdued in their OB line. So the IBs are the ones to go. And if you look for IBs, I do recommend the sherried ones. I think it's just a little bit more fun. I think the brand suits sherry very, very well. So check them out if you can. Morlock. Okay, coming in at number 4, we've got another pretty conventional brand here. I've got Old Pulteney. Now, these guys have a pretty solid OB line. I like their OB line, but they also have a fair amount of really good whiskeys out in the IB world. Now, Old Pulteney is a really good distillery. It's got a very coastal profile. It's often very salty. It's often very buttery. It's got good complexity. It's just good stuff. Also, they adapt very well to most kinds of maturation. They suit bourbon very well. They suit sherry very well. You got all kinds of different ages and cask maturations out there. Signatory has some great ones. Old Pulteney is a great brand to explore as an IB, so there we go, number 4. Check it out. Next up, we've got a brand that's not very popular in the OB world, but kind of popular in the IB world, and that's Ardmore. Now, if you've tried their OB line and you weren't impressed, I'm right there with you. I don't love the OBs, but that shouldn't turn you off of the IBs because there's some great ones out there. In fact, one of the best whiskeys that I've had in the past year or so was a 21-year-old IB from Ardmore. This is a brand, it's a peated whiskey, and they really shine through their IBs. And the fact that the regular line, the OB line, is not very popular means that for the most part, these aren't getting snatched up as IBs, so they're pretty widely available and comparatively quite affordable. So if you want a peated IB, but you want to move away from Kalila, but you still want something that's available and affordable, I think this is a great under the radar option. It will scratch that peat itch, and we're getting quality stuff. As I said, they shine through other IBs. So there we go. It comes in at number 3, Ardmore. Okay, for number 2, a few minutes ago we talked about Morlock, and I said if you want a sherried release from Morlock, you're probably going to get a nice meaty, savory quality to it. The OB line is a little bit underpowered. It's a Diageo expression. All of that's true for this brand as well. It is from Diageo. We do have one single OB release from them, and it is a little bit underpowered, albeit delicious, and it excels at being a savory type of sherry. This one's Ben Rinnes. So if you're a fan of Morlock and that style of whiskey, then definitely check these guys out. If you're a fan of their OB release, which is the Flora and Fauna 15-year-old, check these guys out. I love that Flora and Fauna release. Yes, it's 43%, but great flavors in there. So yeah, definitely a good brand to explore in the IB world. Check out the sherried stuff first. I think they make some great sherried whiskeys, but they also have some really good bourbon matured stuff out there in the IB world. So lots to explore from them. Really good brand. There we go. Number 2, Ben Rinnes. All right, so for our number 1 slot, I've got one of my all-time favorite brands, one of my all-time favorite house styles, and that is Longmorn. Longmorn has this beautiful grassy flavor profile, in some cases almost lemongrassy, and that translates beautifully into a lot of their IB releases. Now, obviously, I am biased when I say this is number 1 because I do very much have a soft spot for this brand. And I've even had some Longmorn releases, IB releases that didn't blow me away, but I've also had some that were among the best IBs that I've ever had. And IBs aren't actually a separate category, so I should just say among the best whiskeys I've ever had. Now, I will say this, if you're looking for big drama, this might not be the brand for you. Obviously, they're unpeated, and if you want big sherry, they do have some great sherried whiskeys in the IB world. These guys are a little bit like Old Pulteney in the sense that they can do both bourbon maturation and sherry maturation. So yeah, if you want big drama, you could probably go for a sherried expression. That would work out pretty well. But for me, Longmorn is at its best when it's a little bit more subtle, a little bit more nuanced. I tend to seek out the ones that are bourbon matured, although the sherried ones also excellent. So actually, yeah, just in any iteration, I think Longmorn makes a great IB, and it's a wonderful brand. It's worth exploring in the IB world. So there we go. It's my number one pick, Longmorn. All right, so that was it, guys. That was the list. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, I do want to reiterate that these are just 7 good brands, but really, you should be exploring as much as you can in the IB world because it's a big world and we get all sorts of stuff, even stuff that you wouldn't normally like. For example, I'm not a big fan of the Ardmore OB line. Love the IBs, so IBs can open the door to a lot of surprises. But yeah, the point is, these are 7 brands that, broadly speaking, I think are pretty reliable when it comes to IBs, but obviously it's always a mixed bag. As I said, IBs are always a risk. Of course, though, I want to hear from you. So what brands do you think are a pretty safe bet in the IB world? Looking forward to reading your thoughts about your go-to brands in the comments down below. And finally, before we jump into the mystery pour, I want to say a quick thank you to everyone who helps support the channel, all the patrons, all the channel members. Thank you so much for the support. And if you want to help out the channel, if you want to help keep it financially sustainable and independent, there are a number of ways that you can help. I've got links to both Patreon and PayPal down below, and anything and everything helps, guys. And once again, huge thank you to those of you who are already supporting the channel. It means a lot. Now, if you stuck around to find out what the mystery pour is here, I've got an IB blended malt. Now, this one's called the Art of the Blend. Their approach is a little bit interesting because they don't set out to make a specific whiskey or even a specific style of whiskey. What they do is they hire a master blender and they give him complete free reign. He's got the control and he can make whatever he wants. This one is batch 1, it's cask strength, it's sherried. The master blender here was Max McFarlane, and the component whiskeys are Glenrothes, Craigellachie, and Ardmore. And the reason I included this one is because I wanted to include a blended malt. Blended malts are very interesting. It's an up-and-coming scene these days. It's not all about single malts anymore. If you've tried stuff from Turntable, if you've tried stuff from Thompson Brothers, there's just a lot of really interesting stuff happening right now in that scene. And lots of room for experimentation too. So there we go. Try some blended malts as well. And that will bring us to the end of the video. Guys, thank you so much for watching. As I said, I've got Patreon and PayPal listed down below. Also, I mentioned that I want to hear from you. What are your go-to safe bets in the IB world? Let me know that down below. Finally, down below, you can also let me know what you want to see me review down the line or give me some suggestions for lists. And I guess that's it for today. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.